The $40 million coffin. When you have a $40 million super yacht, you tend to think you're invincible. You've got a top-tier crew, every luxury imaginable, and the kind of technology that's supposed to make you immune to the whims of nature. But nature doesn't care how much money you have. It's the summer of 2024. The superyacht Bayesian is cruising the Tyrrhenian Sea, hopping between glamorous hotspots off the coast of Sicily. On board is a British tech billionaire, his wife, and their guests. Life is good. But on the evening of August 18th, the weather starts to turn. Weather services are screaming about severe thunderstorms, warning of something called a downburst, a sudden, violent column of sinking air that can create hurricane-force winds. The captain and crew knew. They saw the warnings. But for some reason, they didn't fully prepare the ship. Not all the watertight doors and hatches were sealed. The guests weren't gathered in a safe, central location. It was a fatal oversight. Around 2 a.m., the downburst hit. The yacht was slammed by a wall of wind, heeling over so far that water poured in through the open hatches. In just 16 minutes, the $40 million marvel of engineering capsized and sank, taking its passengers with it. 7 people, including the owner, were trapped inside. When their bodies were finally recovered from the submerged wreck, the autopsies told a horrifying story. At least 2 had drowned immediately, but the others died slowly. They were trapped in compartments with just enough air to survive for hours, but no way to escape. They were alive, in the dark, in a cold steel tomb at the bottom of the sea, listening to the water rise, just waiting for the end. A $40 million coffin. The Lion King. Some rich guys buy sports cars. Others buy watches they can't read underwater. And then there are guys like Bernd Kebbel, who basically said, "Nah, I'll buy lions instead." Oh, wait, bro. Not literally. Relax. No lions on a leash. But Bernd Kebbel, a wealthy German entrepreneur and philanthropist, poured his time, money, and reputation into lion conservation. People in conservation circles called him the man who saved lions, which makes what happened next painfully ironic, in the kind of way the universe laughs at while you're still trying to process it. It's the spring of 2025. Bernd and his wife are on a luxury safari in Namibia, staying at a high-end camp where your tent is basically a 5-star hotel room on stilts. The number one rule of any safari camp is simple: do not leave your tent after dark. Wild animals move freely. It's their home, not yours. One morning, just before dawn, Bernd wakes up and needs to use the toilet. Instead of using the ensuite facilities in his luxury tent, he decides to go outside. He unzips the tent, climbs down the ladder in the semi-darkness, and steps onto the ground. A lioness, resting nearby with her cubs, is startled by the sudden movement. She doesn't see a conservationist, she sees a threat. She attacks instantly, grabbing him by the neck and shoulder. Bernd screams. His wife wakes up, sees the attack, and in a desperate, futile act of courage, tries to fight off the lioness with her bare hands. Camp staff, alerted by the screams, rush to the scene in vehicles, firing shots to scare the animal away. But it's too late. Bernd is already gone. The very lions he had spent a fortune to protect were the cause of his death. The lioness, which was being monitored by an organization he funded, was later tracked down and killed, labeled a problem animal. All because, for one sleepy moment, a man who knew the rules better than anyone decided they didn't apply to him. The selfie orphans. This next one is a story about the deadly obsession with getting the perfect photo. It's August 9th, 2014. A Polish couple is on a dream vacation across Europe with their 2 young children, aged 5 and 6. They arrive at Cabo da Roca in Portugal, the westernmost point of mainland Europe. It's a dramatic, beautiful spot with a lighthouse and cliffs plunging into the Atlantic. It's a busy day with tourists everywhere. The weather is fine, but the sea is rough. There are barriers and warning signs all along the most dangerous parts of the cliff edge. The family walks along the path, and then the parents make a decision that will orphan their children. They step over the safety barrier, leaving their kids on the safe side to get a little closer to the edge for a selfie. No one knows exactly what happened in that final second. Maybe it was a loose stone, maybe a sudden gust of wind, maybe just a simple misstep, but they lost their balance. Together. Other tourists, including their own children, watched in horror as they simply disappeared over the edge. They fell hundreds of feet onto the sharp rocks below, swallowed by the churning ocean. A Spanish couple immediately raised the alarm, and a massive rescue operation was launched with helicopters and boats. But the rough surf made it impossible to recover them. Their bodies were found 2 days later. Their children were taken into the care of psychologists and diplomats, their lives shattered, all for a photo. The Instagram fall. And the selfie deaths just keep coming, like a cursed playlist on shuffle. 4 years later, in June 2018, another couple, this time a British-Australian pair in their 30s, they had the perfect Instagram life, good jobs, and a passion for travel. They check into a hotel in the beautiful Portuguese surfing town of Ericeira. That night, they walk to a popular local spot, a 100-foot high wall overlooking the ocean at Praia dos Pescadores. It's a famous spot for watching the sunset, and, of course, for taking photos. No one saw them fall. The only clue was a cell phone left behind on top of the wall. Early the next morning, a fisherman returning to shore saw 2 figures on the beach below. He thought they were just sleeping off a drunken night. As he got closer, he saw the horrific injuries. The police investigation concluded it was a tragic accident. The theory is that they climbed over the low wall to get a better shot, and in the dark, one of them slipped, pulling the other down with them. A final, fatal photo that was never taken. The hypoxia power couple. Larry and Jane Glazer were a real power couple. Millionaire property developers from New York. They had it all, including their own private plane, a high-performance Socata TBM 700 turboprop. Larry was an experienced pilot. He was used to being in control. But on September 5th, 2014, he lost control in the most terrifying way possible. They took off from New York, heading for their vacation home in Naples, Florida. The plane climbed to its cruising altitude of 28,000 feet. At that altitude, the air is too thin to breathe. If the cabin loses pressure, you have seconds, not minutes, to put on an oxygen mask before you pass out. It's the first rule of high-altitude flying. A short time into the flight, Larry radios air traffic control. He reports a problem with the plane and asks to descend. But then, silence. The plane doesn't descend. It just keeps flying, on autopilot, straight and level, heading south over the Atlantic. It becomes a ghost plane. 2 F-15 fighter jets are scrambled to intercept. What the fighter pilots saw was chilling. The windows of the cockpit were frosted over. They could see Larry, slumped over the controls, motionless. Jane was nowhere to be seen. There was no sign of life. The plane flew on for hours, a silent, frozen tomb, until it ran out of fuel and crashed into the sea north of Jamaica. The wreckage was never fully recovered. The cause was hypoxia, a slow, silent, deadly lack of oxygen. It creeps up on you. First, a feeling of euphoria, like you're a little drunk. Then confusion. Then you just go to sleep. Larry and Jane likely never even knew what was happening. They had all the money in the world, but they died because they forgot the one simple rule that could have saved them. The helicopter hobby. For some rich guys, a helicopter isn't just a mode of transport. It's a toy, a status symbol, a way to prove you're a maverick who plays by his own rules. Paul Spencer, who made his fortune with the company Country Baskets, was one of those guys. On January 26, 2012, Paul and his wife Linda flew their private helicopter to Rudding Park, a 5-star hotel and golf resort in North Yorkshire, England. The weather was bad. It was so windy that hotel staff had to help them secure the helicopter on the ground. A professional pilot would have stayed put, but after dinner and drinks, Paul decided he was going to fly home. He was an amateur pilot with a history of relying on his instructor in difficult conditions, but that night he was feeling confident. He was the pilot. Linda was his passenger. The helicopter lifted off, but as soon as it cleared the tree line, it was hit by a powerful, turbulent gust of wind. Paul, with his limited experience, likely overcorrected. The helicopter spun out of control and crashed into a grove of trees next to the golf course, bursting into flames. Whew. Emergency services were on the scene in minutes, but it was too late. The impact and the fire were instantly fatal. The subsequent investigation raised serious questions about whether he was properly warned and trained for flying in such conditions. But the core of the tragedy is simple. He wanted to show off, to fly his toy when he should have just taken a car. The avalanche experts. This story is about a couple who knew the risks better than anyone. Terry Scarsa was a backcountry skiing legend in Bend, Oregon. His father was a ski pioneer. He grew up on the mountain. He and his wife Susan were experienced, respected members of the backcountry community. They taught avalanche safety courses. They knew the rules. And then, one day, they broke them. It's early February 2025. The snowpack in the mountains near Bend is dangerously unstable. Avalanche bulletins are screaming considerable danger. It's the kind of day where experts tell everyone else to stay home. But Terry and Susan decide to go out with friends. They choose a popular area called Black Crater. They see signs of instability, small, recent slides, but they press on. It's that expert bias. We've skied this 100 times. We know this terrain. They traverse onto a steep, wind-loaded slope. It's the exact kind of terrain they would warn their students about. Their combined weight is just enough to trigger the weak layer buried deep in the snowpack. A huge slab of snow, hundreds of feet wide, fractures above them. A D2 avalanche, powerful enough to snap trees and bury a car. Their friends, watching from a safe spot, see it happen. Terry and Susan are swept away in an instant, buried under tons of heavy, concrete-like snow. The rescue effort was immediate. Their friends had beacons, probes, and shovels. They located them within minutes. But in an avalanche, minutes are an eternity. They had already suffocated. The very experts who taught others how to survive the backcountry were killed by their own overconfidence. The mystery of the capsized boat. A beautiful day on the water, an experienced couple, a stable boat, and then, in a flash, a tragedy that leaves 3 people dead. It's November 29th, 2025. Craig and Brenna Millette, a wealthy couple who split their time between Maine and Florida, are out on their 39-foot, about 12-meter, catamaran on the Caloosahatchee River in Cape Coral, Florida. They're with 2 friends. The weather is fine. It's a light day on the water. Late that afternoon, a witness sees something odd. The Millette's catamaran seems to be racing another boat. Now, catamarans are incredibly stable when sailing in a straight line, but they are not designed for sharp, high-speed turns. They can trip over their own hulls and flip with shocking speed. And that's what happened. In a matter of seconds, the boat capsized, throwing all 4 occupants into the water. No one had time to send a mayday. Rescue crews arrived to find the overturned hull and people struggling in the water. 1 person survived. Craig, Brenna, and one of their friends did not. The investigation found no signs of a collision, no mechanical failure. The most likely explanation? A moment of madness, a reckless, impromptu race, a sharp turn at the wrong time, maybe hitting the wake from the other boat just right. A fatal combination of overconfidence and a split second of bad judgment that turned a perfect day on the water into a watery grave.